Hello and welcome to this week's FPL team selection. This week we're looking ahead to game week 4, but before we do that, we have to take a look at last week's results. Now, I was sitting at about 200,000 in the world last week, and right up until the last game, which was the Liverpool and Man United game. Now, as you can see, there is no Mo Salah in this team, and as you can see, my rank has dropped about 550,000 places. So that is exactly why we struggled last week. Is a good way to put it. Salah obviously done really well, picking up a 17 pointer, and again I was literally on like a green arrow right up until that point. I think I was within the top 200,000. I climbed a little bit, a couple thousand places, 10-20,000. Then Salah obviously banged against Man United, and then we dropped about 550,000 places. So that is kind of how my week went. Overall, it was a little bit of a disappointing week. Haaland obviously carried it massively, scoring more than half of my total points with his 17-pointer again, which was fantastic. Absolutely nailed the captaincy again, which was fantastic as well. But in terms of the rest of the team, again, a little bit disappointing. There's a lot of 1s, 2s, 4s in there, which obviously you do kind of want more than 5 for FPL returns, which we only got from 3 of our players this week. And one of those being Haaland. So I did mention it in last week's team selection video that it probably was going to be a little bit of a struggle. Everyone did kind of have some difficult fixtures, you know. Spurs were playing against Palace, which is always a difficult game. Arsenal obviously had Brighton, wasn't really expecting a clean sheet there. Obviously Jota and Bruno were playing against each other in that Liverpool and Man United game, so again, not really too many great fixtures among everyone there. So not amazing, but not terrible either. You know, I think we're still within the top 1 million within the first 3 game weeks, which I definitely think is a positive to look at. I'm quite happy with the way things are going, you know. I plan to wildcard in 2 weeks' time for game week 6. So we're just trying to get to that point. And speaking of getting to that point, let's take a look at this week's transfers. So we're using 2 transfers this week to get us through the next 2 game weeks before our wildcard in game week 6. Now the first transfer we're doing is Saliba to Trent Alexander-Arnold, and the second transfer will be Solanke to João Pedro. Now Solanke has been in my team since game week 1, and he has basically just been getting benched, hoping that he was going to come back. We will speak a little bit about Solanke when we look at our forwards in the team, but first we have to look at our defence. Now speak about the transfer in a little minute. Obviously we've got Robinson starting. He has easily been probably the best 4.5 million defender so far. I think that's 2 assists in his last 2 games he's picked up as well. Even if Fulham aren't keeping a ton of clean sheets, I'm more than happy to go with him. Benched this week, we're going for Mykolenko and Harwood-Bellis. 2 players that just don't have good fixtures and have been a little bit disappointing. Obviously, I don't really care too much about Harwood-Bellis. I don't expect him to be doing well. He isn't exactly going to make it into the starting 11, I hope, anytime soon. Mykolenko was playing last week, and he obviously failed with a 1-pointer as well. So he's dropping to the bench with his difficult fixture. Now, when it comes to bringing in Trent Alexander-Arnold, I have mentioned in the transfer tips video about Andy Robertson and Trent as a whole. I do think both of them are extremely good options. For me, I was just able to afford Trent, so I've decided to go for him. But basically, looking as to why I'm bringing him in, you can see with his stats, he is by far the most attacking defender in the game so far. Not to help the fact that Liverpool haven't even conceded a goal yet. That's 3 clean sheets in a row for them. But when you're looking at his XGI, his XA, his key passes, amongst other defenders, Trent is absolutely blowing everyone out the water. You can see with his expected goals involvement up the top, he has 1.7, which puts him in first place, well ahead of anyone in second or third who are sitting about 1, even like 4th, 5th and 6th are about 0.9, 0.8, you know, that kind of range. Trent's well out in front on 1.7. In terms of his expected assists within defenders, again, well out in front as the number 1 at 1.54. And second, we have Pedro Porro at 0.6. So he more than doubles what second place is getting in terms of expected assists so far. Then obviously key passes within defenders, Trent is obviously number 1 again as well with 7 in the 3 games games that he's played. Now, in terms of expected points, over the next 5 games, obviously for myself, I only really need to worry about the next 2. But over the next 5 games, it is the double Liverpool defence that are taking the number 1 and 2 spot. Now, it's very close, only 0.5 difference between Robertson and Trent. And as I said, purely due to the attacking potential that Trent has, I'm going to go for him despite the fact that Robertson has more over the next 5. So why did I actually take out Saliba for Trent? So looking at the 3 options that I could have brought out, we've obviously got Saliba, we've got Pedro Porro, and we've got Mykolenko as well. Now, with Mykolenko, I wouldn't have been able to afford doing him straight to Trent. Obviously, doing the Solanke transfer to João Pedro freed up some budget. It wasn't enough to move Mykolenko straight onto Trent. I could have went for Robertson instead, but to be honest, I was pretty set on moving out Saliba until game week 6. So obviously, with that wild card around the corner, I didn't see myself playing Saliba until game week 6. I think there's a lot of better options. You can see with Porro and Mykolenko both having good fixtures in game week 5. I would have probably struggled to play Saliba in game week 5 with the Man City game away from home. And as I mentioned in the transfer tips video about selling Saliba, for me, it just made a lot of sense. You know, for Saliba, you're basically relying on clean sheets, and I don't think it's going to come up until my wild card. So it made sense to get rid of him. We're also saving 0.9 in the bank as well, which I can use for any game week 5 transfer, or I could always just roll that into the wild card. And obviously, you've seen with Porro's stats a minute ago in the Trent graphic, he is still right up there. You know, for key passes, he's second. For the expected assists, he's also in the top 3. So someone that I would definitely like, and obviously a really favourable fixture against Brentford at home in game week 5. So that's my reasoning for going without Saliba. In midfield, we have not too much to shout about. We are continuing to play Bruno Fernandes. He has, again, a nice favourable fixture against Southampton. Now, would you believe me if I said of the top 25 midfielders for expected goal involvement so far, Bruno Fernandes is the only one who hasn't returned yet. So again, I'm finding it to be very, very unlucky so far. Again, he played Liverpool in game week 3, so I can't really complain too much about him not returning. But this Southampton game, he has to get something for me because I'm struggling really hard to keep him in my team. If he doesn't get something in the next 2 weeks, he's going to have to come out in my wild card for game week 6. But I'm really keeping my fingers crossed that Bruno can pay us back after his tweet in game week 1, which promised he would return. He has made it even worse since then. So yeah, really hoping for big things from Bruno this week. A hat-trick against Southampton is the plan. We've obviously got a couple of favourable fixtures as well for our other midfielders. Smith Rowe with West Ham at home. Again, only a 5.5 midfielder. You know, he's not. I'm not expecting him to be an absolute world beater and score 2 or 3 goals, but for example, picking up 7 to 10 points would be pretty nice every couple of games. So obviously done that in game week 2, hoping he can do that again against West Ham, who haven't looked brilliant defensively. I think they're actually the second worst defence so far. So I'm hoping that Smith Rowe can get another return there. Jota hasn't been too great. Obviously having to kind of hold out on him because he's not like a big fire that has to be put out. So we're just kind of waiting, hoping Jota can do something. He does obviously have those games every now and then where he just absolutely bangs. So a hat-trick against Nottingham Forest would be the least that he can do for us to make up for not keeping up with Salah as well as we would thought. And then obviously Saka as well. Have got him in my keep list for the transfer tips video this week because he does have a really nice record against Spurs. He's returned in his last 3 games against them with 2 goals and 1 assist, and I'm more than happy to keep him in for that game, and I'm actually hoping that he does very well because it seems to be the kind of game that he always does perform well in. So expecting him to do well, not worried about him not performing this week. And then moving into the strikers, we also once again have Haaland as our captaincy. Can we make it back to back hat tricks? I really do hope so against Brentford. If you want to know why we've stuck the captaincy on him, make sure to go and check out yesterday's captaincy video where we went through all the stats and who you should captain, whether that's Haaland, Salah. We also included Eze and João Pedro in there, so make sure you go and look at that video after this one's finished. Also holding out on Isak, again slowly returning for us. We're still waiting on a big return from him, but he is picking up goals. He did score in the last game in game week 3, picked up an assist in game week 2, in game week 1 as well. So yeah, happy enough to keep him. I think it's a pretty decent fixture against Wolves away as well. And then we've also got João Pedro. Now, João Pedro came in for Solanke. Now, for me, I made this transfer last week, midway, right at the start of the international break, just before João Pedro rose in price. Now, I decided to bite the bullet because there was some rumours that Solanke might not be fit for this Arsenal game. Now, looking at Twitter now, looking at some of the news that's came out, it has come out that Solanke should be fit for that North London derby. I have seen a lot of different news articles tweeting that he's back in training this week and he hopes to be back for the North London derby, so it's not even confirmed that he's going to be fit, so we're going to have to wait and see, and that would be another game that he misses out for. So I really wanted to get a Brighton attacker in, and Pedro just made the most sense. Obviously, there's a lot of talk of which Brighton attacker to go for, whether that's going to be João Pedro or Danny Welbeck. Now, we were again talking about this in our transfer tips video, which you need to make sure you're watching every single week because we're smashing them out and they're doing really well. But for this, for myself, really looking at between Pedro and Welbeck, the stats are pretty similar. You can see with the XG, with the shots, with the goals and assists, Welbeck has a slight advantage, but obviously Pedro has that huge advantage of taking the penalties, which I do think is a huge part of FPL. You want to get the penalty takers in. You don't want to be picking strikers that might not take penalties. I think that's one of the big downsides of Ollie Watkins. Now, obviously, with João Pedro, the same price as Danny Welbeck, you can see with his X points as well down the bottom, he's expected to score 5 more points than Welbeck over the next couple. And I just think he is a better option purely because of those penalties. So I do feel like both of the transfers we've made are logical, are going to be great for the next 2 fixtures. I'm more than happy to use those 2, which does bring it down to 0, which means we're only going to have 1 heading into the wild card in game week 6. But I don't think it's the end of the world. I think the transfers were suitable and a good time to use them to get the players in that I did. So that is the team heading into game week 4. Let me know down in the comments what you think. Would you have made any different transfers to what I did? Let me know. Make sure to leave a like if you enjoyed. Make sure to subscribe if you're new, and I will see you all in the next video.